So is the Moyu Weilong WRM V10 the cube of the year? It might perhaps be.
The Moyu Weilong WRM V10 is a great new flagship from Moyu, and one great point with this cube is that it is very cheap compared to their previous version. The Super Weilong was super expensive, and even the V9 was quite expensive, and this version is even cheaper than the V9, and the features are basically the same. The cube does not have adjustable magnet strength, but this cube does have UV coating, and the cube does have a 20 magnet ball core, so you get a lot for this price. Not only is this cube cheaper than previous Moyu cubes, we have also made an offer on our website where the cube is cheaper than on any other cube store we've found so far, so make sure to check it out in the description below.
And the magnet strength on this puzzle with the 20 magnet ball core, talking about the two more expensive variants, is very good. So even though it isn't adjustable, we think that they've made a good decision in the magnet strength, meaning that you likely won't have to change it even if you could.
Even the spring version is very fast, so fast that it's almost a problem controlling it, and we've found ourselves adding more and more lube into the cube to make it more controllable.
Indeed, so if you like fast puzzles, this will be the perfect one for you, but for me, I like a bit more controllable puzzles. I'm very close to saying that it's too fast for me. So we will likely both have to lubricate it with some heavier lubes and fiddle around with tension settings, you know, what they call elasticity. Do a few clicks counterclockwise to see if that will help you be able to control this puzzle a bit more.
When it comes to the feel of this puzzle, it does feel like a old Moyu cube combined with maybe a bit of GAN feeling. The pieces of this cube, especially the corners, are actually quite similar to modern GAN cubes. And when you unbox the cube, it does have this GAN out alignment, so you kind of get the GAN feel until you lubricate it a bit more. And a big difference here is that it is a lot more, I would say even stable, but also a lot more blockier.
The puzzle is very stable and you don't have many lockups either, so it's an interesting feel of like a hybrid between a light but blocky puzzle.
Yes, a big plus with this version is that they actually completely solved the corner twisting puzzles. Even at the loosest setting, you cannot corner twist this cube. Speaking of the adjustment system, this has a completely new revamped adjustment system, which is kind of similar to both the GAN speed cubes and the Tornado. You have this tool to adjust the tension and elasticity. The cube comes at the loosest setting, and now we're talking both the springs and what you would call the screw or center travel. And unfortunately, even though it is at the loosest setting, we feel that it is quite good out of the box. So you can't make it looser, but you can make it a lot tighter, and we're talking a lot, so that you can barely corner cut. So we feel that as with the GAN cube, this one is a bit misaligned. It goes from a medium to a very tight.
Indeed, and it is a shame, because having an easy to use adjustment system even for beginners is a plus, but it needs to be well calibrated to actually make it usable. And in this case, it is barely usable. We found some good tensions and settings on this puzzle, but it would have been much better if you could go looser on the center travel, and perhaps even if the tension, you know, spring strength would have had a broader scale as well. On that scale, we went quite a few clicks counterclockwise to find a reasonable speed of the puzzle, since it is a very fast puzzle. But again, we found good tensions and we found good settings, so likely you will as well.
The adjustment system is easy to understand, but unfortunately they didn't go with the numbers on one of the settings. Instead, it just says Moyu, so you have to count yourself, which is kind of weird.
The corner cutting is good, but not great. Out of the box, it was better than after lubrication. It can obviously turn more than 45 degrees, but it is far from effortless, and we have seen better corner cutting on other puzzles, but it is still sufficient.
Lockups on this cube is not an issue. The ball core works great. It's actually a huge ball core in this one, which is interesting to see. I don't know if it makes an impact, because I think the blockiness does not come from this huge ball core, but rather from the edge pieces, which looks like edge pieces back from 2015.
So now for the final part, which version should you get? Well, there are 4 versions, but we don't feel that all of them are necessarily worthwhile. To begin, on the lower spectrum, we have the magnetic and the magnetic UV versions, and while they are good, there are many other cubes which are equally as good. You know, for example, the V5 dual adjustment, or even one of the RS3M versions. are also very good speed cubes, but for almost half the price. So we don't necessarily think that buying the magnetic or magnetic UV version is worthwhile.
When it comes to the ball core versions, we prefer the spring version, and the reason for this is that both the spring and the maglev are extremely fast, almost to a fault, so you don't need a maglev to make it faster, and both of them feel quite compact and tight, so having the extra spring elasticity is simply a bonus, and it will still feel quite similar. It's almost hard to tell them apart, and the spring version is much cheaper.
And for me personally, I definitely prefer the turning feeling of the spring. It just has a bit less of that compact feeling, and I just enjoy turning it much more.
When it comes to the most expensive version, which would be the Ballcore maglev one, I feel that it is not really needed because it costs about $10 more, and the spring version is already super fast. And with this one you get a bit less flexibility, which I think is a bad thing on this cube because it is already very tight and compact.
I couldn't agree more. For me personally, the spring version is just a tad bit slower, which I like. The spring version also has a bit better corner cutting and a little bit less of that compact feeling. I find that the spring version is a more pleasant cube to turn. So I don't feel that spending €8 extra is worth it when the spring version is in fact, in our opinion, even better.